Hello everyone! Today I'm going to be talking about hand size measurements and how to measure your hand to see if it's going to fit a pistol. Okay, so recently I've joined IDPA. Now I'm typically a cowboy action shooter and I don't have a lot of semi-automatic pistols that I can use for the stock service pistol category of IDPA. I've got a model 1911 in the closet, and technically that's my wife's. But in order to play this game, I decided I'm going to have to purchase myself a semi-automatic pistol, and my goal was to go into the stock service pistol division. Now, that's a little tough, actually, finding a pistol that will actually fit me. My hands aren't particularly large. I would say that they are maybe large mediums or possibly small larges. Now, for example, I've got a mechanics glove here. I buy large mechanics gloves, but they are not tight. Like, these gloves are supposed to be very, very tight on your finger, but they're not. This is a large size, and my index finger I've got some more room in. Same with most of the fingers, it's quite loose. So that'll give you a good idea of how big my hand really is. It's not huge, it's not tiny, it's somewhere in between. And what I've found is that most modern semi-automatic double stack 9mm handguns are just a tad too big for me. So I'm going through this process of trying to find something that will actually fit and work for me. Now, most people would say, like, if you go on YouTube or on the internet or go on a web board and ask people how do they find a gun that fits, they will tell you things like, well, go borrow a buddy's gun, or go to your local range and give somebody else's gun a try. Well, that may work in, the United States, around larger centers where you've got a gun club that has thousands of members in it, but mine doesn't. Mine has 1,200 members. And only a tiny fraction of that are pistol shooters. And only a tiny fraction of that shoot competitively in a sport like IDPA or IPSC or cowboy action shooting. So the pool of people doing it, I'm thinking maybe in like 3 dozen at the most. And good luck trying to catch up with them. You go to a practice, there may only be 4 people there, and half of them are all running the same handgun. So that's pretty much out. Same thing with ranges. You can go to a range, a commercial range, and rent a handgun or many different types of handguns and give them a try. But where I live and in most of Canada, unless you live in a major center like Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Toronto, places like that, you won't be able to get to a place like that. Like, the closest place like that to me is 750 kilometers away. It's a full day's drive and a day's drive back. And of course, you're going to have to overnight. So that's an expensive trip. Originally where I grew up, it was 650 kilometers away from the place I'm at now. So, I mean, that's like a 1,300 or 1,400 kilometer one-way trip to get to a range that has a selection of handguns that you can try. So yeah, it's a problem. So what do? Well, you can buy guns, have them shipped to you, try them out, and then either trade from there or try a new one or buy another one. It's horrendous. So what I'd like to do today is propose a measurement system for your hand and for the gun itself, so that you can go online or go onto your favorite message board and ask people, take these measurements of your hand, take these measurements of your pistol, and then you can compare it to your existing pistol and your existing hand, and then figure out from there the likelihood that that pistol is going to work for you. So here we go. Let's get started. So how do you measure your hand? Because, well, your hand is an organic thing, and every hand is different, and I wouldn't be surprised if your hand actually changes with age. And of course your profession. If you change jobs, your hand is probably going to change shape slightly. So how do you measure something like this? Well, there's a couple of critical dimensions that you can take, and I think it'll be fairly consistent from person to person. If you use a 1 inch wide measuring tape, just a standard measuring tape, you can get these anywhere, and they're all pretty much the same, and the standard size is about 1 inch in width. Now, really, probably the most critical dimension on your grip in your handgun is going to be the distance from the web of your hand to your preferred shooting position on your fingertip. Now, most people like to have it right about here, like I do. Let's use this. Right about there. That's where I like to have my trigger. It's not in the crease of my finger, and it's not on the tip. It's sort of in this meaty spot here. There's lots of strength here still, but there's still a lot of sensitivity in the finger. Like, for example, most of my fingertip is calloused over from doing work. You know, if you play guitar or something like that, you're not going to have a lot of sensation in this part of the finger. But right here, you do. And that's where I like to have my trigger finger. But, I mean, that's kind of hard to measure. But if you use your measuring tape, you can actually get a pretty decent measurement here. If you go from the web of your thumb, so kind of line it up like this, and put it right into that pocket. You can see it. It's like a square shape right here. It fits in quite nice. So my finger overall from the web of my hand is about 3.5 inches to the tip. My thumb is about 2 and let's just say 2 1/4 because it's pretty close. Now that's repeatable. 3.5, 2 1/4. 3.5, 2 1/4. So most people can take that measurement. The other measurement that's kind of important is this area here that wraps around the pistol grip. Now, I'll use an example here. This is a CZ75 SP1. This is the tactical model. Now, when I grip this gun, and I've got it, you know, nice and centered in my hand, lined up with my forearm bones, this part of my hand, these two fingers are doing most of the work when I'm gripping the gun. These two fingers, the index finger and the thumb, they're not really doing much other than operating the controls. Mag release, slide release, trigger. It's this part of the hand, right here and here, that's really gripping the gun, in combination with the second hand, of course. But, you know, not all shooting sports are you allowed to use both hands. In IDPA, and maybe others, you may be forced to shoot this gun single-handed. So this is an important dimension here. So how do you measure that? Well, really, the gun sits right here, right in the crease between, you know, the meaty part of your thumb and these fingers. So this dimension here, from here to about here, which is the average between your two fingers, is the measurement you'll want to take. So that's kind of hard to determine sometimes, but if you can fold your fingers in, that gives you a good idea of where you should take your measurement. Like, you could take a piece of tape, like so, and just kind of line it up where your fingernails come in contact with your palm. Like that. That'll give you a good reference line. And it actually works pretty well. Like, when you look at this grip, this part of my hand here comes in contact right at the back of the gun. Like so. So that'll give you a good idea and compare it to other people. So you take your trusty measuring tape, and then you measure from that line to this point here between your fingers. And it looks like I'm about, I don't know, 4 3/4 of an inch. So between those two measurements, and possibly this distance to get the grip length, which is not as critical, you can actually compare your hand against other people's hands. So how do you measure the critical dimensions on a handgun? Well, really, The most critical dimension, of course, is between the web of your thumb and your trigger finger. So this dimension here, between probably the closest part on the back strap and the midpoint on the trigger, are going to be the critical dimensions. So I know from experience that double action trigger pulls are just too long for me. So from here on in, I'm going to be measuring from the single action mode, because more than likely I'm going to need a single action pistol or something with this dimension close to a single action pistol like this one. You can take your trusty calipers. I'm going to zero this. I've put some tape on the jaws here so I don't mar the finish. And you can actually measure this distance between the trigger. Be nice and light so you're not moving it around. And the closest spot there. So for CZ75 Tactical in the single action mode, the distance is 2.675. So you can actually take that dimension and say, for example, for me, I know that in the single action mode, when this is nice and straight in my grip, with the trigger in the spot on my finger that I like, there is enough room where I'm not touching the frame. That's a pretty decent pistol grip. That'll work and not throw off my shot for the most part. So now I know if I'm shopping for a new pistol and it's got a distance that is more than 2.675, it's likely going to be too big for me. Not without making trigger modifications, which may or may not be allowed in the division that you're shooting in. I mean, if you're going to the range and plinking, yeah, you can buy a new trigger and do it. If you're maybe doing IPSC, depending on the weight of the trigger rather than the length, it may be fine. But in IDPA, it isn't. If you adjust this trigger, put a new trigger on it, more than likely it's going to bump you up into the enhanced service pistol category or division. So I don't want to do that. I want to stay in SSP, in stock service pistol. So I know that if I have to start, for example, in decocked mode, well, that puts the trigger quite a bit farther away from single action mode. It's like 2.9. It's too much for me. My finger does not fit on that. Not without cocking the pistol a lot in my hand, which is going to throw off the shot. Either that or I'm going to be touching the frame and causing all kinds of issues with accuracy. It's not going to work for me. The other part that you can measure is the grip diameter. Now, where do you measure from? Because of course, measuring from here is a shorter distance than measuring down here. So what I recommend, is that you grip your gun and then you take a measurement from the underside of the trigger guard, on a nice high grip, the way you like it, and measure that distance. And it looks like from this here to this part here, which is the combination of these two fingers, is about an inch. I suspect most people will be about an inch. So you can mark that location on your gun with your handy piece of tape. So this is about, it's kind of hard to do on a camera, but we're probably looking, if you do it perpendicular to the grip, that's probably the point there where you need to know. Now you can go raid your wife's knitting kit, or maybe your own knitting kit. Maybe you're a sewer, I don't know, I'm not here to judge. And you can get a flexible tape and measure that grip diameter. Okay, I raided the wife's knitting box. I didn't have the right prop for this. So you take your tape and you measure along that line. And that will give you a good idea. So this grip, say, is about 5.5 inches in diameter. Now you can change that a little bit by changing grips, but it doesn't change it a lot. If a medium grip or in-between grip, or the grip that's on it, is too big for your hand, likely changing grips won't change it that much. Maybe 1/4 of an inch. That's it. You can go really fat, but getting smaller seems to be a problem on most pistols. So now we know that for my hand, I can grip this. It's tolerable for me, but it's a little big. It's a little bit on the big side. This feels like it's not quite right. It feels like when I'm firing this gun single-handedly that this is going to start to pop out on me. I just can't quite get a grip on there. You know, maybe if I had ultra thin grips, it might make the difference. But it's likely that this G10 grip on a CZ75 is very thin. It's very well shaped, and it's likely that the grip is just a little bit too big on me. So now I know if the grip is any bigger than 5 3/4, it's going to be too big for me. And if it's, you know, I'm probably shooting for something with a 5.5 inch or smaller, maybe even down to 5 inches for grip size. Anything bigger than that, and I'm going to have troubles holding onto the gun. Now, what about the length? Well, I don't know. I don't think this is as critical. I shoot cowboy action shooting, and a lot of people I've noticed with single action armies, the grip isn't long enough for them, and their pinky actually goes underneath, and it doesn't seem to bother them at all. You can do a measurement if you want from, you know, your grip height and compare it to a pistol that you already own. I mean, for me, the long grip of the CZ75, it's plenty. It's plenty. Maybe something a little bit shorter would still work for me. I've tried pistols that are a little bit shorter than the compact models, and it still fits. But that's a measurement that you can take. I mean, that would be this dimension here. And you can compare it to other people and their pistols. Same kind of idea. Maybe from the trigger guard. I suppose this distance here is the part that matters, because your hand is going to be up here from here to down here. So you can measure that from here. I don't know, that's going to be a little tough, but I don't know. I don't think that's as critical as the other two dimensions. So where do we go from here? Now, this information, you're not going to find a lot of this information on the internet. It's just not recorded. I haven't found any kind of trigger to web information on any pistol except for the Glock G48. They've got a dimension on their website from here to the trigger. I think they're shooting for the crowd that has less than small hands for the G48. That might be a very promising pistol for anybody who doesn't have a large or extra large hand. But you won't find that for the CZ75, you won't find it for Browning High Power, you won't find it for Model 1911 or any of the other pistols. I just haven't found it anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this video and I'm going to go on Canadian Gunnutz into the pistol and revolver section, and I'm going to post this video with instructions, and I'm going to ask all the gun nuts out there, the Canadian ones, because of course I'm Canadian, to measure their pistols. And it's my hope that that information will become a hub that you can reference. You can go and say, you know, hey, I'd really like to try a Model 92. There's a whole bunch of Beretta Model 92s on the market now, surplus ones. You know, is it going to fit my hand? And you go to Canadian Gunnutz, you go on to the pistol and revolver section, and you go, oh, here's a measurement. These measurements here, there, the grip diameter. Oh yeah, no problem. My hand is going to fit that. I can purchase it, have a high likelihood that it's going to fit my hand. Or, you know, I'd really like to have a Model 1911. I've been told that they're slim and that it'll fit most people's hands. What are the measurements? You can go in and measure, and you can go, oh, yeah, that one will fit me, but anything larger than that will not. I think that'll be a pretty useful reference, and I really hope that the Canadian Gunnutz, you know, they're pretty good people. I love that website. It's a great website. That they'll join in and help me, help me help other people when it comes to shopping for handguns. So that's it, folks. That's all I got for you. I hope this helps you. It seems like we're the forgotten about people that don't have like large or extra large hands. Maybe the manufacturers are going to start looking at us with more of an open eye. I mean, the G48, that's a good promising solution where it's, for the most part, it's compact pistol with a 10 round magazine. It's like perfectly made for Canadians. No extra, like for example, a double stack 15, 17 round magazine. It's just wasted on us because we can't have anything more than a 10 round magazine size. So having all that extra bulk, it does not help us. There's no plus side for us, especially for those of us with small hands. So I'm hoping things are changing when it comes to that, and that other manufacturers will start following that trend. For example, in Canada, there's no point in having concealed carry sized pistols, like the very, very, very short barreled, very slim, very short. I mean, that would fit most people with very small hands, like say the M&P Shield. It's very thin. I bet you it would fit lots of people's hands, but they're prohibited in Canada because of the barrel length. In Canada, if you've got a 4-inch or smaller barrel in length, it's prohibited, and only a handful of people can actually buy them. Those are the grandfather types that own those pistols before the new laws came in place. So we're talking a very, very, very small population of people. Unless you can get a model with a very long barrel, like 4 1/8 of an inch or 4.2 inches, on say like an M&P with that's made for a 3-inch barrel. Now you're looking at custom pistols. You got to try to import it from the United States because nobody in Canada carries it, of course. Well, why would they, right? Now you're talking about a lot of money. So I'm really hoping that manufacturers will start looking at people that are outside the United States or in states that aren't free, like California, where they've got restrictions kind of similar to Canada's. So hopefully that makes a difference. But I'm going to put the link when I create the site, or not the site, but the thread on Canadian Gunnutz. I'm going to put that on this video, and hopefully over a few years we'll get a whole bunch of measurements on there, and it'll help for people who are shopping for handguns who have less than large hands. So thanks for watching the video, folks. I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you out on the range.